not-for-profits gain, teaching kids that self-belief can ease the pain. Every child deserves to face their fears with measured thinking, not just tears. She's planting seeds of strength.
Paulette. It says starting soon on YouTube, on LinkedIn. I think that's YouTube. We've just gone live on YouTube. So okay.
Hello. Good.
Yes.
Good. Marvelous.
Hello everyone. We're here, right? We're here from Restream.
From Restream. That's the new one. So it's very exciting. Very exciting indeed. So hopefully you can see me. It was a bit of a mad, crazy moment. I was a bushy-tailed crazy woman coming to the screen because I didn't take note of the time, and so it was like panicking.
Right, so we're live on LinkedIn as well now. Sorry.
Oh, brilliant. Okay,
that's what you're listening to. Okay.
Excellent. Great. Well, I'm sorry we're a little bit late, but we're learning this new Restream.
It's not bad for us, Paulette. It's not bad for us.
No, it's not bad. It's not bad. We're doing very, very well.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Well done, Annie. 5 minutes just to get to the grips of this new thing. But today it's all about talking about new things. So I'm really quite excited about Annie having to go through this huge learning curve of a new streaming platform. And that, in a way, is kind of what we're talking about today. So, hi, I'm Paulette Hallam. Great to see you all here. And, of course, the wonderful Mr. Osung. If you'd like to introduce yourself, Annie.
Introduce myself? Yeah. Oh, no one knows me. I agree.
Yeah, they do.
I say I'm literally here having fun as I always do. You know, I'm absolutely a bit consumed by the Author Speakers Conference you see behind me. I said that is on Thursday, and I'm doing what it takes to organize such an event with great speakers like you, Paulette. So I made another video of you today, which is in landscape, not Instagram. Thingy-majiggy. But look, Author Speakers, that's my dream coming true, and of course, I would love for your friends, Paulette, to buy tickets to come along.
Yes, absolutely. And hopefully, if you're here and you haven't bought your ticket yet, please come along. It's $10, $12, whatever it is, £10. There's 6 plus any, so that makes 7 speakers. And, there's a real array of business people like me talking about children, right through the spectrum, and real interesting, inspiring stories. And I think that if you come along for literally that amount of money, you're getting so much more than your value, than you're paying out. And it's not like one of these, where we give you an hour of, chatting or whatever. This is proper speakers learning to public speak or be public speakers. And it's Annie's dream, and it's coming true. And I'm really grateful for everything that Annie does for both Mental Wellness Cafe and also for the Children's Artist Room. But, if you come along and you are interested in what we talk about and how we talk about it and get something from these rooms, then you're really going to get something from the Authors Conference. So please do come along. And I will talk about it later on as well before the room finishes. So to get us started, I really, really wanted to bring this up because I've been talking about reading and stories and books, and that got me thinking about the children who like to read or are learning to read with you, but don't know how to write stories themselves. And Ben was an absolute example of this. So I remember, and with a real moment in my life was when Ben was crying in class, and I was working from home. I got a phone call to come and talk to him. He was inconsolable, and that was because he had got a blank piece of paper in front of him. And the teacher had just said, I want you to write a story, but it can be about anything. That threw Ben into the biggest abyss you can imagine. His mind went to, I've got no rules. I don't know what to do. I've got no direction. Give me something. There's nothing. I've got nothing. Where do I start? I can't start. And don't start. And so what happens is immediately you go into a spiral. And especially when Ben was learning all about autism and how his autism worked and how he was trying to understand what was even different about him, this was the first time it had shown itself to such a degree. It happened later on in art class when he was about 11 or 12, but it really kicked off. And I just had to hold him and say, okay, so what's the problem? And he was like, can I come home? I don't know. No, listen, it's so like 11 o'clock. It's break, dinner, or lunchtime, and you'll be home anyway. So tell me what the problem was. And then he just said to me, I can't write a story. And I remember it so clearly. And I thought, why have I not spoken about this? And the blank, can you imagine a child just getting given a blank piece of paper and he's got his pencil and he's looking at it going, I don't know where to start. And I remembered thinking, where do I go to find out the information? And so immediately I'm online, I'm looking, I'm trying to find out. And they said, mind maps, but children understand them as spidergrams. So what's a spidergram? Find out what a spidergram does. What does a spidergram do? How does it work? And then all of a sudden, I started to be able to say to him, right, he did come home with me. He was completely broken. And he felt like the class were going to laugh at him. And there was all kinds of stuff going on. And he was the top of the class in maths, top of the class in science, top of the top of the topper. He was so smart, but this had just floored him. So we went home and I said, go and have about half an hour, just do whatever you like. Have something to eat and then we'll talk about it. So my break from work was spent looking at spidergrams and how they worked. And I'd always said to Ben during stories and when reading, why do you think that person felt that way? How do you think that person, trying to help him understand more dimensions of characteristics and parts of the stories of children and children's stories. But I'd never realized just how hard it was for children with special learning needs, especially things like ADHD, dyslexia, ADD, and any of the neurodivergence, really. If you haven't been shown, this is huge. I mean, this is huge. So using a spidergram for sort of 4 to 6 year olds is really good because it's about oral storytelling. So you can say to them, talk me through the story, because it's only going to be about, if you're lucky, 20 lines. So, talk me through the story. So that's the first part of learning how to write, is to speak it. So he would say, well, I'm going to have me and Toby are going to be in the story. That was his best friend. Okay, you and Toby. Where are you going? Oh, I don't know. Well, think about, what do you like doing? Riding our bikes or going to the park. All right, you're going to the park. So why don't you have a story about you and Toby going to the park and you find something? What could you find? Could we find money, perhaps? But yeah, you could find money. Or you could find a shiny object that you don't know what it is. Or a bone. Oh no, I don't want to find a bone. Okay, it could be a dog's bone, could be dirty, yuck. No, don't want to do bones. Okay, let's go with the little treasure trove that you found. Well, we'd have to phone the police, wouldn't we, and tell them about it. So I said, well, yeah, or you could bring it home and we could have a look inside, find out what it is. No, I think you should just phone the police and tell the police you found it. I said, okay, well, that's a really good answer with a wallet, or if you found somebody's purse, definitely. But if it's a treasure trove, maybe you could open it and see what's in it. Wouldn't that make an interesting story? And he was like, I don't know.
Oh, we've lost Paulette's sound. What happened there? Oh no. Oh no. What happened there? Welcome, Restream. I guess you get used to glitches on our platforms, right? No idea what happened in that situation. I think Paulette just fell off. Where's Paulette? No, she's there, but she's not there. Not a clue. So hopefully she'll come back. Yeah, it gives me a chance to wax lyrical about author speakers, right? Might as well take my chance. Where's that chat? There's that chat. Right before I start waxing lyrical. So welcome, Sir Philip. How are you? Great to see you, my friend. Great to see you. Always great to see you. Look, as I mentioned, everyone, the question is always, have you bought your ticket for author speakers? Philip, have you bought your ticket yet, my friend? No, ticket's $13, £10. I guess I hope you will buy your tickets to support the event because we need your support. I need to pay my speakers, right? I need your help.
Oh, there I am. I'm back.
You're back. You're back.
I pressed a button. I'm back.
Yeah. What, were you?
Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you. Were you kicked off, or were you? Did you fall off, or were you just hidden?
Annie, can you hear me?
Can you hear me? I can hear you. Yes. Can you hear me? So Natalie's just
Can you hear me, Annie?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello, is anyone there?
Yes, it's your screen that's going funny, right? So you can't hear me.
No.
Why can't you hear me? No, you muted yourself now.
I don't know if anyone can hear me or not.
We can hear you.
I think I'm going to go out and come back in again.
Okay. All right, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
Just
you do that. I say blessing, welcome. I think I think I see you got your ticket, so I'm glad you're here. Who's got a ticket? You have to leave and come back in.
Has happened.
You have to leave and come back in. There's no other way.
I should go out and come back in.
Yes. Yes. You gotta leave and come back in, Paulette. I can see you, I can hear you, but you can't hear me. So as I can see her, I can hear her, but she can't hear me.
She goes out and comes in again.
Yes, and I literally log out and then come back in.
Log out, come back in. All right, fine.
Okay, see you in a second. Yeah, that's what I say. Natalie, I see you're here. Where's Nat? There's Nat. So we've got to turn that on. Yay! How you doing, Nat?
Hi, Annie. Hi, everyone.
How you doing? Welcome to our first fun on StreamYard. So Paulette's going to log back in a second. Linda, superstar Linda. Linda's bought a ticket. So anyone buys a ticket now is my best friend. I truly have all day for you, right? And she says, hello, Nat. I see Michael's here as well. That's you, right? Hello, Natalie. Yeah, that's you. I see Alavine is here as well. Welcome. Have I shared a link to join if you want to join? I'll put the link on the event page as soon as Paulette comes back. So Mr. Calm is here as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Calm says, I can hear both of you talking. You're both too loud. Yeah, when someone's saying, "Can you hear me?" the inclination is always to scream at them that you can hear them, right? But it's calmer now. Natalie, you got your screen thing on, so we can see a picture. Oh, Paulette's here as well. Okay, Paulette's back
again.
It's
difficult to see any.
To see what? Yes, it's hard to see.
The settings.
Let me see whether when we put you on big screen. Okay, so it's focusing more on your, on the circle. So, that's visible enough. Now let me bring Paulette back in. Hello, Paulette. Can you hear us now?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm sorry if I shouted.
Oh no, true. Mr. Calm, you bought a ticket through Paulette, indeed, and true. Thank you so much. Yes, no, applause to you. So I'm grateful for everyone who buys this ticket. Dr. Lisa is here as well. And then she's going to buy her ticket. So It gives me joy. We need more of those who are on board ticket here now. Philip is the one that we're talking to primarily. That was before we leave today. I'm sure more people will join who have on board tickets. Yeah. Anyway, Paulette.
So I was in the middle of the story, and I do apologize. So I brought Ben home, and I'm just finding out where I've gone because I've gone flying up in the air. So I brought Ben home. We had a long conversation. We spoke through a story, and we got over the whole give the wallet to the police. We got through the whole of that. We ended up on a treasure trove, and when we got home, there were 2 coins inside the treasure trove, and I had to say to him, "What are we going to do with the coins?" And he was like, "We'll phone the police." I've got the most honest child on the planet. Okay, we'll phone the police. And then what the police will say is, if nobody claims them in so long, then you'll get to keep them. And he said, really? And I'm like, yeah, really. So in the story, we wrote that, we had to wait. The final ending was 28 days and counting was the last line of his story. And he got an A star and he was so happy. And he wrote it himself, but we spoke it through first. That was my first learning of understanding how to help him get to this place where he could meet this imagination and his very righteous side, his very moral side, very ethical side, but open his mind to what our story. So in future, we said we would have these spidergrams. And as I said, I'm talking when he was sort of between 4 and 6. And the spidergram was basically very simple. It was a spider with 5 legs. It was the who, the where, the what happened. So the who, where, what happened, how did it end? Yeah. And are we going to want a sequel? Are you going to want to write the next part to the story? Or is the story finished? Is it like, and they all lived happily ever after at the end? Or is it 28 days and waiting to see if you're going to get the coins? So he really got to grips with that. So whenever they said write a story, immediately he'd turn his paper over where his name and whatever would be on the other side, and he'd draw his spider and he'd write the who, what, where, what happened, and what the ending's going to be. And that was something that the teacher then took on board. Now, you'd think a primary school teacher would perhaps have done that by nature. Maybe they just assumed that they had done it once and they'd remember. I don't know. But the point was, we got to a point he was happy. He was happy he could write he could write that story. And then gradually I used to say to him, act it out. Pretend you are really finding the thing or doing the thing, or when you're on a shipwreck and you're looking all over this shipwreck that's just turned up on the side of the where you've gone on holiday, and you understand that you can see things in the shipwreck and you can describe them. Imagine you're really there. Close your eyes and pretend. And he would find that so hard. And it broke my heart. So I decided that the way to open his mind to story writing was for me to read more and more and more books. So instead of him having 1,000 facts about the moon, 1,000 facts about the stars, 1,000 facts about I don't know, nature, 1,000 facts about sharks and whatever's. It was always fact, fact, fact. And he used to stay well away from the sort of fiction, the storybooks. And I was like, no, 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 no. We'll do some of that. We'll do a book about flags if that's what you want to do. But we also have to do some of these. And so I bought lots and lots of books, obviously the ones that we had when we were younger, the bear hunts and things like that. They just used to go over his head. Going on a bear hunt, why? Because we're going to catch a big one, but why? And I would be like, let's just do it as a story. Whereas the Cat in the Hat was great because it rhymed. He liked rhymes. So to help him with his vocabulary, we used to play games. So in the car, instead of having the music on loud or whatever, we used to say, right, we're going to play a game today. You got to rhyme the word with, let's say, for example, A is like arm, and then B could be what? Balm, maybe. C could be calm, D could be darn, E could be whatever. So this is what we used to do, and he would be sitting there like this because he knew that he'd got F for farm. In his head, he was already ahead. She's got that, she's got that. That means by the time it gets round to me, I'll have F. So he's already thinking, what word rhymes with F? Farm, farm, farm. And he would be ready for it. And then he'd work out that she got that, she got that. I'd be the next one. Oh, what? Oh, I've got that. What rhymes it? I can't think of something. And then all of a sudden something would come. So we used to increase his vocabulary by rhyming, playing rhyming games. We used to name an animal beginning with the letters. We used to do colours. We used to do things you could see out of the car. Not kind of I Spy, but a bit more. We always used to look for purple pipe. Don't ask me why, but we used to say purple pipe was lucky. So you were always looking on the motorway for purple pipe, and the first person to shout purple pipe got the luck. There's no prizes, just the luck, you know. But the point I'm making is you have to learn as parents, especially of children with differences, and in neurodivergence, it's different. There's nothing you would say that's right, wrong, or indifferent. It's just a difference. He had a different way of seeing the world, and we had to meet him where he was, not them try to pigeonhole him into something without the explanations and the support and the help. So the storytelling started to get bigger and better because we'd read a book about a dragon. So now he might write a story about a dragon. It might even be a very similar story to the story you read, which I used to find quite funny. I think all plagiarism get done for that. But, you know, he'd be 7. It was okay. We'd read a book about, I don't know, I'm trying to think of some of the really funny ones. It was a really naughty monkey, and I can't, curious somebody. It was a really naughty monkey. I can't think of his name, but he used to get up to all kinds of mischief. And Ben had a mischievous sort of, I think it was a tortoise, which you wouldn't think would be particularly mischievous, but he had a mischievous tortoise in one of his stories. And the point I'm making is that, yes, he was replicating what he'd read or heard or seen, but it was opening his mind to, you can write stories about other things that aren't real. There was a book about clouds that he loved. So I was like, no, we're not just going to do this is a cumulus, this is a that. We did would you imagine that cloud's happy or angry? Well, why would you say that, Mum? Well, maybe they're tears and they're not actually rain. And he'd look at me and he'd roll his eyes back of his head as if I was like stupid. He said, right, shall I explain to you? And then he'd go into the science of clouds. And I go, okay, we're not going to have a happy cloud or a sad cloud because you're just not going there. But maybe we could have a whole story about the weather because you got an event, okay? And he's like, okay. I'm like, right, imagine if you've got a big tent. What's the one thing you don't want to happen? And he said, well, really bad wind. Exactly, because it might blow the tent away. Or heavy rain because it might get wet and it might let water in. Yeah. Or the ground would get wet. Yep, exactly that. And then we started to say, what about really hot? Because the tent might get really, really hot. It'd be horrible to be inside the tent. Oh, yeah, we don't want it to be really hot either. And it was really interesting that he could suddenly start to feel the heat in the tent. He could imagine what it would be like to stand in the tent and get water on his head. He was imagining the tent being blown and him trying to hang on to the tent so it doesn't go off into the sky like a kite. So although we were reading a book about clouds and reading a book about the weather, I was learning to change tact with him and let him have his facts, because the facts, consume facts, love facts, but actually to turn those facts and those sorts of books into something that was a little bit more imaginative, a little bit more in keeping with what he was supposed to be trying to do. So there's another thing that I found, and again, because of the way that we learnt, was we would buy various games or various things like picture sequence cards, you know, where you can put the beginning, the middle, the end, and they've got characters and they've got a car and they've got this, they've got that, and you can sort of make stories up out of these picture sequence cards, which is a very big thing, especially through the SEND education system. They're very big on that. But things like the Gruffalo and the Bear Hunt, they were great. I loved them. Ben just looked at me as if I was, you know, he would go along with it and put up with it, but you could sense that he was sort of more or less giving in to me as if to say, you know, Mum, you know, you want me to enjoy this, so I will. Not that he really was. As he got older, I want to talk about sort of developing from 7 to 9, probably even to maybe 11. The language changed, the ability to spidergram still. He always spidergram, but he called it a mind map by then. So the spidergram became the mind map. But he would have like a main character and then there would be secondary characters. And he, instead of saying like, where is it going to be? He'd say, what's the setting? Or how long were they kept in this place for? Or what was the problem? Or what were the 3 key events that happened to get them there, or how were 3 key events to get them out? What did they all feel? How were they feeling? And the ending would be, he used to use the word a big bang ending, like he liked a big ending or something, you know, somebody blew the wall off and got them out or something, you know, really big endings. We never had like a and then they all lived happily ever after. There was always something happened that was, because he'd written on his spidergram, or what was their mind map, big ending, you know, like we would call it climatic ending or whatever, you know, a big climax to the story was always his dream. And I remember him coming home and saying, we did improv at school today, Mum. I was rubbish at it. I was really rubbish at it. And I was like, why was you rubbish at it? He said, because I didn't have my paper and pen to do my spidergram. And if I could have spidergrammed something, I'd have been all right. And I said, well, okay. So now you need to be able to visualize a mind map. So when they say you've got to do an improv acting about falling off a bike, hurting a knee, and getting taken to hospital, right? And you've got people that are going to be the ambulance and the people at the hospital, and da 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 da, right? So what was your bit of this? And he said, well, I was the boy that fell off the bike. I said, okay. And why could you not do that? He said, because I didn't know what to say. I said, well, what do you think it would feel like to fall off a bike? He said, they didn't ask me that. They just told me to say words. And I was like, okay, well, let's just go back into our heads and say to ourselves, what might you be thinking if you had fallen off your bike? You might be like looking at blood trickling down your leg. It might be really hurting. You might ask them not to touch your leg or to be careful because your leg's sore. You know, there's things like that that you could think about. So he was like, yeah, I could think about that. So I said, what kind of things could you say? And he was like, well, I could say my leg was hurting. I said, yes. And you could tell them what else? And he said, that I didn't know how I came to fall off the bike, or that I think the car clipped me. Oh, I said, that's good. So you're now telling them how the accident happened. Very good. And that's how he started to have this, what I call an active imagination. But it took a lot of work. And that doesn't mean to say that some children will, some children won't. All different neurodivergents will have all different situations. And I'd love to hear, you know, how your children coped with these situations. And I'm sure, because I've spoken to many other parents who children didn't have what we now call ND and neurodivergence, they would have the same problems, but they would be just slightly different. So the improv thing was quite hard. So I used to tell him, take the improv into mind, think about the dialogue, what you'd say, think about your mind map in your head, how you'd feel, what you'd want to tell them, and why it happened, and all the things that you'd normally do in a story, and just say them. And then gradually the improv wasn't as terrifying. Improv day was, it was almost like cross country. It was that bad, you know. He didn't cope well when you threw something at him that was not expected. So the teacher's sick, so a new teacher comes in, or I forget what you call them, like a resource teacher. So a teacher that just I forget what they call them, but like a relief teacher. And
supply teacher, one of those.
Supply, that's it. Yeah, supply teacher. Thank you. A supply teacher comes in and just says, "I want you to write a story." Now he's ready. That would have sent him in a tailspin. First of all, there's a change in teaching style without any knowledge. That would be a bit of a tailspin. And then on top of that, write a story. Oh, you know, but he could cope. He got to the point where he could cope. And as he got even into the 14 stories, English language, you always got to, either write a piece for a newspaper about an incident. They give you an incident report, or do this or do that write a piece about write a story about da 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 da, or they'd give you the first line of a story, and the first line might be, "I'm really sorry," said the vet. That's it. "I'm really sorry," said the vet. Now that could be a very sad story, or it could be a really sad story, but it didn't have a sad ending, because "I'm really sorry, but we are going to have to take the dog's ear off, but he's going to live and he's going to be fine, and he's still got another one and he'll be fine. Or we're going to have to amputate his foot, or we're sorry, we're going to have to cut a bit of his tail off." It doesn't mean we're really sorry he's going to die. And that's where Ben used to go straight to doom and gloom. I told you the big endings, the tearful farewells, it would be real doom and gloom stuff. And I used to say to him, you don't have to always go there. You can have a bit of light and shade with things. And some of the stories he'd bring home, I'd be like, okay. I'm not sure that would have scored quite as highly if I'd have read it, but and that doesn't mean that it was ever like bad. It's just that you understand that if you put him in a maths test, he's going to win for the school. You put him in an English test, he may struggle. He's still got like the highest possible grading in English at the end. When he was doing his English GCSEs over here, he ended up with 9s in both language and literature. But literature is easier, because literature for him was like a maths equation, right? Where in the story did they mention that Lady Macbeth felt remorse? And then he would go right straight to that piece and go, Lady Macbeth felt remorse, and she couldn't get the spot of blood out of her hand. And the quote was blah. He wouldn't even need to look it up, because his photographic memory, there you are. Have that paragraph there. That was like maths equations. Ask a question, you give an answer. Turn it into black and white. So we ended up with, I've got numbers going on, so there we are. I'm on air again, apparently. So the most important thing for me anyway is that if you have got children and you are involved with kids, please take some of this away and work on it, use it, because you'll find their lives become so much easier. I've got some points here, and I know Nat's going to come up as well, and she's an expert in this field to help me. But with ADHD, or with neurodivergence, I've really spoken about, we really need adaptations, spidergrams, mind maps, that kind of thing. With ADHD, the challenges are more to do with organization, an actual starting point, sustaining attention enough to get the story done, and sustaining attention enough to be interested enough in the story. So that again, the spidergrams come in, but you need perhaps to keep it very, very tight so they can keep the focus. That's something you'd really work hard on, is making sure they finish is crucial. So no jumping between the stages, no getting to the end before you got to the beginning, that kind of thing. Dyslexia, the main challenges we always find are with the work, they panic over spelling, and then when they get the spelling wrong, they'll be upset about it. The working memory and the writing fatigue. It can become very exhausting when you're having to rethink and think again over and over. How many times have I spelled that word right? Have I got it wrong? Have I got it right? Questioning yourself. You can use adapted spidergrams for that situation. So you allow single words or symbols, use voice notes to explain branches of the spidergram, allow for typing, which is very useful. And also that has got there is a special program that's designed to help children that says, that's not the right spelling, why don't you try this? It will give them an idea of this or this, and then they get to choose, and 9 times out of 10 they'll choose correctly, but it doesn't feed the word. It gives you options to help you look at it and try and remember which is the right way. As for the writing fatigue, again, the typing can definitely help with that. Spelling is important, but I think in the planning stages of writing, I don't think that we should stress as much as perhaps we do. So with autism, as I said, the challenges are flexible thinking, so thinking outside of that rigid thought process, and having that emotional insight is the way I described it, which is probably as best as I can describe it, which is being able to deep dive inside yourself and have those emotions, about being inside that tent and feeling how you'd feel. It's an event that you've arranged, it's a party, and the tent's about to fly away, or the bouncy castle isn't secured down, and it's scary time. So you can get that emotional insight, but it takes work. And then I really wanted to finally talk about DCD. So any kind of motor difficulties, obviously bigger paper, intelligent mapping with computers is available. And then all kinds of rules and regulations about what you can and can't do. The biggest one I think was really important to me is about cognitive overload, which is where we put too much on children and we don't realize we're doing it by either trying to help them or by them not being given the opportunity at school to be taught properly, maybe because they're switched off or whatever. So I kind of feel like that's a really good time. Bring back in Natalie, please, and let's see what Natalie thinks to what I've come up with and what her
she keeps falling off. She was here just now, and she's fallen off twice so far.
The screen went off as well, and I went back.
Yeah, and our recording stopped apparently.
Oh, that's a bit
abruptly,
sad.
so I had to restart it.
Oh, so we're gonna have a bit of a break in that one.
Yeah, but that's right. No, literally, was it a few seconds gone?
It's a learning curve, right? It's what we're just talking about.
Yeah,
it's adapting.
Tech does what tech does, and I say, StreamYard used to freeze and die as well, so I'm not overly concerned. Natalie's back though. Look,
I'm gonna go on quiet. I'm gonna let you talk to me your opinion, and let's hear from that.
I think a lot of storytelling is having imagination, and I guess, and you share strategies for people with different abilities. So I'm thinking of my friend Michelle, who has aphids, something like that. And essentially, most of us, when we close our eyes, we can still see. We can see a picture. We can visualize stuff. We have that imagination. Whereas, and I said, Michelle can't. When she closes her eyes, she doesn't see anything. I don't know. It's a bit like people with autism, where you said it's that they just have a blank slate. It takes a lot of work, I guess, to get people to be able to have that imagination. So let's hear from Natalie, and I'm sure we'll come back to. I'll come back to you, especially about. I think kids today struggle more. I don't know. I can't. Well, do I know why? I don't know why. It could be the fact that they don't read as much. The fact that they're playing on tech. Again, but you just thought things like games are pure fantasy. It's not just fantasy. They can see the picture. They can see the thing play out. They can see the whole scene play out. But somehow or another, they just don't have the same vivid imagination. I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. To say that's my observation.
100% agree with you. No, and if it's all there, Annie, and it's in 3D and it's in color and it's very interactive, it's taking away from that child who's trying to make something out of nothing. Because when it's all there in front of them, it's like with comic strips are great because they're just flat drawings. And you have to kind of imagine the drawing moving around or whatever.
Yeah.
But when the character's doing it, it's kapow. You got to imagine the punch, But it's yeah. I'll talk about that in a bit. I've got a bit on that later, but let's go to that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Before we talk to Nat, so if your our friends have turned up, so let me welcome them. So Annie's here. She says, "Hopefully you're feeling better, Nat." But Annie's at work, so I don't hide now. Let me try again. Okay, there you go. I'm getting used to where the comments appear. Hopefully you're feeling better than that. I'm sure we are. So that's Melissa Houston is here as well. She says children's minds will be sculptures either way. Allow them to dream beyond what others have, even if using the original story as a guide. Like I said, it's a good idea. It's that some kids really can't dream in that way. When you use the word dream, I can think of me. I haven't had a dream in my sleep for years. I can't remember the last dream I had. So not everyone has the power to to dream. Well, I said I dream when I'm with my eyes wide open, and I think that's a better dream than when you're asleep. How you doing, Sean, in Guatemala? Have you bought a ticket yet, Sean? No. Jay, you bought a ticket yet? Welcome, Jay, our storytelling genius. Paulette will be on you later, so buy a ticket now. Save yourself the hassle, right? For author speakers. No, I think Sharon's bought her ticket. So I'm glad you're here. What's that? Calm says, my streaming app refuses the link. It says it's a restream link. Yes, it's a restream link. It is. It's in the link's on the comments section of the event page. So we're on Restream now, not on StreamYard. So Michael, if you want to come and talk, click the link. No, it's the right link, right? Coach K is here as well. Please drop the link, please. Okay, I'll send you a link in a second. Oh, Professor Roxanne is here as well. She's bought a ticket already, so welcome, Prof. Great to see you. Right, that's me for now. So let's talk to Miss Natalie. How you doing, Nat? Yeah, to unmute. Yay, go for it.
Hi, Annie. Hi, Paulette. And everybody else.
Hi, lovely.
Yeah. Hi, I'm okay. I think what you're both saying, I think a lot of people feel the same way as you both do about the challenges with regards to just generally communicating and being able to sustain that interaction so that you can learn, so that you can gain and explore. I noticed, Paulette, that you used the ERA cycle, didn't you? Experience, reflection, action with Ben. I found that quite useful for my daughter, where with my eldest son, I tended to use the Gibbs reflective cycle, which is basically, it's got 6 stages, and the first one is description. So what happened, and within what context, obviously, I broke it down and simplified it for him. And then obviously the second stage would be feelings, focusing on how he felt about what happened, and before, during, and after that experience. And then the third would be, I'd ask him what other feelings he had. Um, did he feel good or bad about particular aspects of the experience? Yeah, and then obviously we move on to the fourth stage, which is analysis, and that's where we would explore ways for him to make sense of what had happened, why he was feeling distressed, and what we could do about it now and to prevent it in the future. And then obviously stage 5 would be the conclusion, and that would feed into what I just said about obviously finding a way to mitigate that happening again. And then obviously number 6 would be action plan. So we'd say, right, what else can we do so that we're not focusing on this negative thing that's just happened? And whilst we're doing that, what do you think that we can do so that we can build a plan so that going forwards you will be able to navigate that situation better? Obviously, more simplified words. It's been used since mine were little, so it's all adult language now. But yeah, obviously, I really like the Gibbs reflective cycle because you're able to go through the experience, but as an observer, even though you might be the person that directly experienced whatever context you may have experienced that has dysregulated you. And yeah, like you say, I think it's important to allow the expression of emotions. And sometimes, if there's a language barrier, be it because the child can't, like, they're not able to read yet, or perhaps they're not able to write, or both, or even speak, then that's an even bigger challenge. So I used to use visual boards because my eldest, he was a little prodigy, and unfortunately, due to a domestic abuse situation, unfortunately, that we were in, the trauma that he experienced, he reverted back to non-verbal. So he started making sounds like and instead of actually communicating with words how he was able to previously. And it also impacted him physiologically as well, because it had a instant impact on his central nervous system. So he had nervous accidents with his bladder and his bowel. So to navigate this, because it was a challenge for him, because he knew that he could toilet, he'd been going to the toilet for many years on his own and things. I sort of said to him, look, if we're out in public, because I knew that he was shy. I said to him, what can we say instead, so that you don't get embarrassed because you need to go for a poop? So he would basically turn around and he'd say cheese on toast. He hates cheese on toast. And when he thinks about cheese on toast, it gives him a stomachache. So even though he was struggling to verbalise, because he'd get that image in his head, because I would literally walk around the kitchen until I came up with a suitable way for us to communicate. And so because I knew he could understand me, he just wasn't able in that moment to verbalise what was happening with him and how he was experiencing what I was saying and doing. I'd literally just walk around and pick things up and say, what does this make you think of? And another time I had to do that was because we had the same issue with the toileting. This was before he was able to communicate that he needed to go for like a pee. So I took him to the tap in the kitchen, and it was an older style tap. So when you turned it on, it would make that kind of banging, clunking sound, and then you'd hear the water slowly rising up it. And just the suggestion of that, and then I said to him, look what's about to happen. Just that in itself was enough to trigger him needing to go for a wee. So every time that he needed to pee after that, he would say tap, because he was shy about letting people know that he had bodily functions. So yeah, but there was ways of doing it. But yeah, another one that he said when he needed to go poop was the chicken and the egg, because when he saw an egg being laid by a chicken, it made him think about pooping.
But
So,
Natalie, can I ask you, was this before you became trained, like me? Like all this, what happened?
Yes. Back then, yes. I didn't realise that I was doing a lot of this stuff naturally. The thing is, a lot of these reflective practices and theories, many of us do them naturally already.
That's exactly what I'm going to say now. I mean, there are probably, that's why I say that to grandparents, aunts, cousins, parents, whatever, if you're involved with children, sometimes just purely by natural, Coach Kay's here, she's going to be exactly the same, because things come naturally to us and you don't know why, you don't know how. I know that I read every flaming book there was on autism once I understood the diagnosis, but prior to that we just learn on the hoof. And I used to come up with, when he was little, he used to get confused about what part of the day it was. And we used to say, like, I used to go morning, then it's lunchtime, and then this is when you come home. So you can look at your arm at any time and know where you are in the day. And when I showed that to the speech and language therapist, she said to me, are you qualified? I was like, no. She said, what made you come up with that? I went, I don't know. But he needed a visual, right? Everything like the spidergram, I just used to use my fingers so that he didn't have to write things down. It was, if he looked at his finger, he knew where the who was, he knew where the where was, he knew where the why was. And so he would just work his way through the spidergram through his hand, in his, when he was doing the improvs and things like that. So I think that we do understand our children probably better than anybody, and you learn to adapt your speaking methods, your reading methods. Like I said, if he wants to read a book about clouds, we'll read a book about clouds, but we've got to do something with that weather book that's also going to help him with his imagination. When we talk about the flag books, yeah, you're gonna win every prize in the quizzes, because every flag in every country, and you can probably tell them to within a few thousand what the population is, or you can probably tell them what the currency is, and you can probably tell them whether it's a dictator or a royal, blah, 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 blah. But that isn't going to help your imagination. It's just fact. And yes, you do win the quiz prizes every time. Yes, I know you do. But we want to learn about imagination too, because it makes you a whole person. And part of relationships and building relationships is having the imagination to understand the other person's feelings. It's about an interpretation. Do you not agree? think Nat's gone quiet on me.
Oh, sorry, say that again.
I said having imagination helps you understand each other's feelings. So
Yes, definitely. It's just it is harder for some.
definitely.
Like as I was saying with you on the phone the other day when we was having our discussion, I suffer with prosopagnosia, so I literally don't see people how they literally are in their face. I can remember their eyes. I remember their bone structure. I can remember general things. Maybe they were wearing red or blue, but I do not remember anything else. And so, as a child, that made navigating socially a lot harder for me because I oftentimes would second guess my emotions and my feelings around certain people because I couldn't really tell what their expression was on their face. And on top of that, I found out that I could only had partial hearing in my left ear. So I'd been silently teaching myself to lip read and I didn't realise.
That's exactly what we're talking about, isn't it? That is exactly what we're talking about. We pick these cues that if you've got, thank goodness we've got emotional intelligence and we've got an ability to understand our children, ourselves, that we can then put it into our children, our families, and without even knowing how much you need to adapt their learning, you kind of do it alongside. And when I went away to get the learning and get the qualifications, there was so much that I thought, well, isn't that common sense, right? And common sense being, a lot of learning is common sense. A lot of helping your children is because you know your child better than the teachers are with them. You're with them longer than they are. You know how they'll get completely blindsided by a certain thing. Threading a needle was impossible for Ben because he had dexterity issues. So, that was another one, threading a needle. Who'd have thought that would cause a meltdown? Absolute meltdown. Could not thread a needle. And the teacher who was in charge of that class kept him behind. It didn't make a difference if she kept him for 3 bloody hours on top. He was never going to thread that needle. We came home and we practiced and we worked on it. We got a very big needle with a very big eye and we learnt. But you can't shout at a kid and keep them on detention for doing something that when you've got dexterity issues and you are they say the reason you can't ride a bike, the reason you can't do these things is because you have this, and then the teacher knows all that, it's all on his file, and yet she completely embarrasses him in front of everybody because of that one fact. And I wanted to go kapow on her. But
Paulette,
yes.
sorry, I'm just wondering, when he was experiencing these things at school, what story did you use to help him resituate and empower him?
It wasn't about him. It was always about the situation and not about him. I used to take the situation away and make it just about somebody having to thread a needle. It wasn't about Ben. Whenever there was a meltdown, it wasn't Ben's fault. The meltdown happened because of this, not you. And by separating those two scenarios, we managed to get through pretty much every single meltdown, every problem, because then he didn't blame himself. He didn't keep beating himself up. He didn't keep like you said, the embarrassment of something. The kids took the mickey out of him because he couldn't thread the needle. I used to get mad about the silly things, and then I learned that actually, if he couldn't thread a needle, half the class couldn't, if the truth be known, right? And when you speak to Ben, were you the only one? No, there was about 6 of us. Didn't tell me that bit, did you? You made it sound like it was only you that couldn't do it. Lots of people have dexterity issues. Lots of people have problems with fine motor skills. You're not the only one. And I used to try and always take away this feeling of wrong or blame or making him feel like somehow it was his fault, because I used to always make it about a situation, not about him. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And what was his favourite book when he was going through a hard time? What was that one childhood book that he used to go back to
I Love You.
seek strength from?
I Love You This Much, or something it's called. I think it's
Yes, I know the one.
yeah.
That's
And
a
that
nice
was
one.
all, even when he was older, like, 8, 9, that would still be the book that if he was having a moment, I knew that if that book was off the shelf, then he was having to go back to he was actually being able to give himself a reset, as I called it, like a reset button. I used to call
Yes, yes. Reading is very good for that, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've done studies on it. It really calms people's nerves. It regulates their breathing, and a lot of times people don't realise they forget to breathe, and that accelerates the heart because that puts stress on every single part of your body.
Yeah.
So doing something that brings you joy and takes you to that calm place inside of yourself is very beneficial, especially in moments of dysregulation.
100%, 100%. And as I said, that was the book that would always go missing. Listen, we've got Coach K on the stage, so we ought to have the moment to talk to Coach K. Thank you so much.
Hold on. Let's welcome Yolanda quickly.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know Yolanda was here. Thank you.
So Yolanda, so Coach K, you found the link yourself. So Brother Charlie's here. How you doing? Who else have I missed anyone? I don't think I've missed anyone. No.
Hello, Coach K.
Hi, Natalie. Hey, Paula. Hey, Annie.
How you doing? So let me get rid of that. Okay.
I'm happy to have caught you guys. I finally got this time thing. I'm getting this time thing down. I really feel like this room just needs to be anxiety's room, because I think that most adults suffer from anxiety to the point that they legit don't dream or imagine, and they're not the ideology that no one's thought of, that not being normal and that dreamers are abnormal, is just a little bit weird to me, because I was listening to you speak earlier, and I was just thinking about how lucky it's been to have a mom like you to go all those extra miles of understanding, because most parents are just as bad as the teachers. And in situations where, like for myself, I see the world very similar to Ben, but I've never been diagnosed with anything outside of an adjustment disorder up until now. And so I know I'm neurodivergent. And so as I have 3 children, I just looked at, I've always parented from a place of love. And so like when I had my first son at a young age, the first thing I did was took a cycle breaking class. And in that cycle breaking program or class, one of the things that they really push was adult literacy and reading to your children. And so since the time my oldest, who's 26 now, since before he was born, I've always had a children's library, and they have some of my books from when I was kids. And it's always been a thing that when children come to my house, we always like read. But knowing the things that I struggle with, and knowing that I would say that my teachers were probably some of my first bullies, especially as it comes to like racism and systematic things that really could hold, that the things that shape a child's core being at the early ages were tampered with me, because most parents have been like, well, okay, let me just say this: in the Black community in America, a lot of our parents suffer from the same things we suffer from like passed down trauma, and just think it's normal because they live through it. So they don't necessarily look to identify things that may be even considered genius, because they just see it as different themselves. And so that within itself is a struggle that I seek to help people with daily. And listening to you guys speak always confirms when I come here that my visual mapping class is something that's like really needed, not just for children. I really don't mind doing it with children, but for adults, because there's so many adults that were actually left behind that are leading children from their own blindness. And to me, it makes more sense since so many of you amazing people are able to help children and already like kind of are centered in that space. I look forward to helping adults with these same issues, because if you fix a child and the parent's still not broken but not not relieved, let's say that, I think that's a better word. If the parent hasn't had their anxieties relieved, then all that work goes to nothing. Because if you empower these children, but then the adults are like, I don't know what you're reading that book for, you, because that's not going to make you this or make you that. I think that there's so much power in having these open discussions and bringing to the forefront that more adults need to lead by example by way of practice than anything. And it doesn't mean mimicking the child as much as it means unpacking your own anxieties to why you're not dreaming, to why you're not imagining, or, things of that nature. Because I think a lot of adults lose faith. And I think that's really the word when we say we know how to parent this, but we've never had a parental book. It's like for me, God is love. And so God shows up when love is needed. And I believe that it was love that made you power through to figure out all these different things for being. And that's the same thing that all three of my children are totally different. My oldest son is extremely laid back, more ADD, had a tendency to float a little bit. And so he needed an IEP that required him to sit in the front of the class. And then because he had teachers that didn't teach him the right way with like math, for example, his math teacher one year was not really a certified math teacher. So the core foundation in which he learned threw him off for all his math classes after that, until I found a male tutor that spoke his language to explain things. And then all of a sudden, everything just clicked. And so I think too that not everybody is for everybody, whether it be an adult or a child. And it's very imperative to not just find somebody that speak your language, but to also, as an adult, figure out what language you actually speak outside of English, because there's more adults that need visual mapping than children, because that's exactly how you pull out a dream. You visually map it out. I asked a young man earlier today, matter of fact, I said, do me a favor, tell me your biggest dream if money wasn't an option, because it kind of broke my heart the other day speaking to him, and he just could not imagine being a millionaire. He just thought it was so preposterous. And how could I ever be a millionaire with this 9 to 5 and insurance, and if I have a wife and kids? And I'm just like, whoa. You're 33, you don't have a wife or any children right now. The world is your oyster, and there is a sea of possibilities. I'm like, you can tell me one thing you love, and I can tell you 10 ways to make $1 million just from that one idea, because of my ability to imagine. But then I pair it with not strategic, but strategies that are just practical strategies. So for him, I say, what's something that you love so much? Because he kept saying, it's not about the money. Everything's not about the money. And a lot of people think that I'm more money driven, not understand that good results just lead to a lot of money, right? And so, and when you don't undervalue the person, on top of that, if you value the person properly and they deliver how they're supposed to deliver, a lot of money is supposed to show up, because people are so accustomed to undervaluing themselves, going back to the same anxieties that and pain points that were possibly created as a child that limit them from seeing big pictures as adults. And it's just, at the end of the day, it's sad. So I like literally had to peel back these layers. Like, what do you love? okay, you love this. If that's what you would have did, like, have you considered coaching? Have you considered owning a team? Have you considered sponsoring a team? What if you just start by volunteering as a big brother at a program for kids and introducing them into baseball, since baseball is the thing you love, and then possibly taking the money from your 9 to 5 to buy a batting cage business that's already owned and operated by somebody, or partnering with a facility that does um, conditioning, because people who have kids that are wanting to be good at baseball, if you were good at it, then go help somebody else. And he's like, oh, so it's not about the money, it's about the impact. And I'm like, exactly. Exactly. But when you do it well, people will partner with you and then money will come. So don't be afraid, or don't think that it's a bad thing that a large financial reward is maybe at the end. It's supposed to be when you're following your inner voice and doing things to create an impact. But if you don't believe in yourself, it's going to be so much harder to do. And so, again, I think a lot of adults carry these anxieties that we're talking about with these kids. And that if we're really going to fix the problem, we have to kind of like go to the head and then work our way down, because I would hate to see so much beautiful work being done to empower children and then their parents mess it all up.
Wowza, absolutely. And unfortunately, I would say that in certain countries that is more prevalent than any other. Um, and we have found, listen, there's no question, there's correlations between um, children with ND will have a parent with ND, or a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle with ND. You know, any of the neurodivergences do follow through. There's no question it is an inherited situation. People fought that. They fought hard against it because that meant that you were blaming someone else. And no one's trying to blame anyone. We're just trying to understand the how, and then we can understand the why, and then we can go a bit like Ben's five fingers. But I think that what happens, and it happens in our school system, for example, my husband, as you know, Charles was a maths teacher for a while, about 7 years. And I remember him coming home and saying that he asked in a classroom, oh, he was asked in a classroom, that's right. They were doing a test, and some kid said, "Sir, how much longer have we got?" And Charles, being Charles, pointed to the clock on the wall, the big round clock on the wall. I went, duh, like that, right? Duh, like, like he would, because Mr. Sarcasm, the kids loved his banter. And so some of them would snigger and whatever. And then this kid went, no, I don't do them ones. I don't do them ones. He said, what do you mean you don't do them ones? He said, I can't do them ones. I do digital. And Charles was like, hang on a minute. How many kids in the class, put your hands up now, who don't know how to read the clock like that? And there's about 14 children out of 36 didn't know how to tell the time. Now that means that their primary school have failed them. Their parents have failed them in a way, because maybe they don't know how to do those types of clocks. It doesn't have to be personal. It doesn't have to be, sorry, someone's ringing. Doesn't have to be personal. It doesn't have to be anything other than the fact that they either missed the class, didn't understand it, didn't actually say I don't understand because they were frightened to. There cannot be that many children, a third of the class, over a third, who couldn't tell the time using an analog clock.
You know what I realized with that? Not to cut you off, but like a lot of parents, it's like this, like it's a blind assumption, right? So like when you picture parents working, kids going to school, and because when we were in school, they taught that at school. But now we live in a digital time where it's not being taught at school, because that clock, same analogy when it comes to mailing a postage letter, because everything is electronic now. writing out an envelope is not taught at school. And I don't think most parents are just simply not thinking about what are survival skills that are not being taught that I should probably still teach my child. But then that's the thing that I like about the educators that I've come in contact with on LinkedIn, because like today, for example, I found out over 90 million people are about to lose their job at like one particular company. And with me being the empath that I am, I'm already thinking like, how can I help people that about like based off this knowledge that I know is coming down the pipeline. But I see opportunities when I hear things like this of people that are actually able to fill in the gaps virtually for things that the school they can't go back in time and teach. Like, for example, the US is already behind. We don't even learn the metric system and the way that the rest of the world even sees weather. And so we are already behind. And so there's so much to teach. But I listen to situations like this and I think that, okay, with this incubator program and uh, this membership that I'm creating, how can I create an impact that would not just help these people, but, like trickle out on the spider story and actually be a blessing to adults and children. And so hearing this, it's like, okay, wait, my brain is like doing one of those where it's like, what if these people that are getting ready to be laid off can now utilize technology to teach these particular survival skills? Because that's a survival thing. If push comes to shove and the batteries go out, sundials were a real thing.
I mean, another example of that was when Ben had to mail something to a solicitor. He had to sign something and mail it. And he met me and said, Mum, where do I put the stamp? And I was like, you really? And he was like, I've actually looked online and I've seen a picture of an envelope and it's in the top right hand corner, but I just thought I better check. And I was like, yeah, stick it up there. And he's like, Mum, it's got the Queen on it. It's an old stamp. Does it matter? I said, no, the King won't mind. Just stick it on, it'll be fine. It's got a value. It's like currency, right? But the thing that is, I mean, we laugh, we joke, he's got the most amazing sense of humor, which is fantastic. Not self-deprecating anymore. Used to be so self-deprecating, and that's not the case anymore. He's kind of coming into himself a little bit, and that makes it much more fun. And when him and Charles get together, it's hell for me because I'm usually the butt of most jokes. But the thing that you said about, pouring into him and learning and being willing to, I'll be honest, I was floundering. I really was. But I'll tell you something, and I think it's something that you take with you from this room to your classes. And I would be delighted to know that I've contributed in some small way. But I used to have to try to say to him, a situation would happen, and I would say, okay, I'm going to stop you now. Okay. Was that a big fish problem or a small fish problem? And he'd look at me and he'll go, it was a small fish problem. Okay. So why did it get a big fish reaction? And he'd look at me and go, oh, I see where you're going. And I go, okay. So I said, big fish problems, big fish reactions, little fish problems, little fish reactions. So the big fish, little fish thing became such a big thing with us that he would say to me, I had a big fish, little fish situation today. And I go, oh dear, what happened? And then he'll tell me. But the fact that he's now recognizing that means that in his mind is associating reactions and how things worked for him.
I love that.
There's another one. We had a situation again, and it's not so much about story time, but it is about learning practical skills in dealing with these children that need additional help. He was getting pushed about by this little boy who was half his size, but he'd let him push him over, push him out the queue or whatever. So every time it was the bell rang and you had to run to queue in your class, and he would run to queue and this kid would go smack and knock him over. And he was known as George. And I just remembered that the monkey was Naughty George, that used to get up to all sorts of tricks. So it was George. And George used to push him over. Now, Ben's 6'2" now, and he's got 46 chest. So we're talking about quite a lad. Now, I think George will probably be 5'5" because he was a very small lad. So unless he had a huge growth spurt, both his family or both his parents are fairly short. If they met now, it would be very funny. Like, he'd probably come up to Ben's, chest. But Ben would be just Ben. He wouldn't. Is a bit like any. They look big and scary, but actually a gentle giant. But we had to practice pushing in the kitchen. I would say, right, you push me, and then he pushed me, and I go, right, now I'm going to push you back, and I push him back. And then he'd push me, and then I push him back, and I go, right, this is called you push me and I push you. You're not taking it. You're not accepting the push. You're giving them the pushback. That's what pushback means. Okay. So when George pushes me, I'm to push him back. So I said, yes. I said, okay, fine. Okay, you remember that? He said, yeah. I said, right, it'll be the last time George pushes you. I promise you. Anyway, I swear to God, this was horrific what happened. And I got told this by a dinner lady who's actually one of my friends. And she said to me, the break bell went, everyone ran out to the playground. She said, and all of a sudden, I've never seen Ben walk with such stride and determination. He strode across the playground where George was, and he just went, whoom! And this kid went flying, right? I mean, he literally took off the ground. Whoom, he went. And she said, and then he just turned around and walked quietly back to where he was with his people that he was playing with. And the dinner ladies had to go over to Ben and go like, what did you do that for? He said, well, I've been practicing pushing with my mum, and she said I'm to push George. It wasn't quite what happened, but that's what he said. And she said, well, I've seen George push you a lot, and I know it's not fair, but you have to be disciplined because you can't go around pushing people. Ben said, I won't push anyone else. It's just George, just to tell him not to push me again. And anyway, the dinner lady said that she had to chastise him and put him to the back of the dinner queue. But he didn't mind because he deserved it because he'd pushed George. So when he came home, the way he told the story was that it happened and he gave George a push, you see. So I said, did George push you first? Now, Leanne had already phoned me and gone, what the heck have you done to your child? And I was like, why? And she said, I hear you've been teaching him to push. And I was like, oh, no, what happened? And then she told me. And I said, that wasn't how it was meant to play out. But okay, I need to work a bit more on my communication skills, clearly. But she said, look, it's been done. It's dealt with. It's over. But these are all things about this child that I didn't realize that when I said push back, it didn't mean that you get to go and have a free go. It didn't give you a free pass to knock the kid out the park, right? So he did get told off, and I was told he wasn't to do it again. He said, Mum, I was never going to push anyone else but him. And I'm like, well, hopefully that will be the end of it now. Now, maybe a year or so later, George was being picked on, and Ben saw it, and Ben went over and stood up for George. And the mum phoned me and said to me, your son is hilarious. And I'm like, what's he done? Like, really? What's happened? He'd now be about 7, just before he left the school, but coming up 6, 7. And I said, what's he done? She said, well, the first thing is George told me while I was picking him up that Ben had helped when he was getting bullied, and I wanted to say thank you. She said, but I called Ben over, and Ben came over to me and said to me, you're having another baby? And she said, yes. He said, how many will that be? And she said, oh, that would be 7. And he said, wow. He said, my mom can't do it. She's no good at making babies. Could you make one for us? So this conversation that went from being like, thank you for helping George, ended up being like a really embarrassing moment where my son's asking for her to surrogate a child for us because I'm no good at it. And it was hilarious. And she phoned to thank me. But the point was, she thanked me about Ben being kind and helping George out, but the fact that she then told me that story, I was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for telling me. And then I had to explain to Ben that you don't go around asking other mummies to make babies for us. But the point of the story is that these are all learnings, and they're my honest takeaways, and I'm giving them to you all as little nuggets of understanding of how I brought up one child. I only have one child, and I brought him up with all the best intentions. I did the best I could with what I'd got. I am not a genius. I am by no means some kind of super mum. I learned on the job, and what I didn't know I read, and what I didn't read I then studied, and then gradually I then used all that experience to read books enough to pass exams so I could actually call myself a children's therapist specializing in autism. And I did that because I thought I might as well use all this stuff that I've done for good. The books that I write are so that I can reach more children, more parents, because I can't go out into the world and tell everybody without rooms like this, opportunities like this. We've got the authors conference later. These are the sorts of things. On Thursday we're going to have this authors conference where I will speak about my books. I will speak about how they're helping across the world. We've got them in Uganda now. We've got them in so many different places. We've got them in Austria. We've got them in, I know they're in Italy. I know they're in, there are some in France. I've been told people have taken books on holidays and left them in the libraries, in the hotels, so that the children get the opportunity to read. Everywhere my brother goes, he goes to Dubai. The books go to Dubai. Everywhere anyone who knows me takes the books. So they're all over the world for children to read. That's one way of getting it out there. Doing these conferences is another. Coming to these rooms is another. And the replays on YouTube is another. All I ever want, and if I go tomorrow, and I don't think I will be because I've got plans, but if I did go tomorrow, I would know that I'd actually, that dream that you talked about, Coach K, this is my dream. This is it. I'm living it. I am living my dream, which is to educate and use the knowledge that I've gained for the good. And so on that note, I'm sure that you want to pop in. I know it's coming up to 5. Are you there?
Do I?
Hey.
Natalie keeps falling off. I don't know why she's falling off so much, and she's come back a few times. I don't know whether it's restream or there's something else. So I would love to know, Nat. What you say, Kimberly Wells? The platform's not working for me. Okay, that's very weird.
When you were saying, oh, sorry, Annie.
That answers my question. Say, Blessing says big fish problems, big fish reactions. Indeed.
It was about that, what I wanted to ask you about. So when you said that, you said there's one other one, because when you gave the big fish, little fish, like big fish reaction, like that analogy, I immediately thought about the people with road rage in Texas that are adults. And you said that there was one other one, but I don't know if I missed it, or if when you told the story, what was the second one? Because you said
so we had big fish, we had big fish, little fish, and then we used to always have for every action there is a reaction.
Okay, yeah.
And that was Ben learning that whatever wherever it started, there was always going to be an ending, right? So, for example, if you push somebody over, there's going to get a punishment. Yeah. If you can't thread the needle, is there going to be a punishment? No, there's going to be a solution, which is we'll work out how to thread the needle. So it was always about trying to show him that it doesn't stop at the action. Yeah. That the reaction we can sort out. The reaction can be altered. The reaction can be improved. The reaction can be something else. It doesn't have to be that the reactions are negative. The reaction can be a positive. So remember that for every action, there's a reaction. And that
No,
goes for adults
that
too.
one I got down packed for sure. But I just meant I really like that one in terms of a lot of adults that try to justify not having emotional intelligence. And so and
Mm.
so I felt like that the big fish reaction, big fish problem, big reaction, little fish problem, little reaction. I really like that one because that's something that would actually paint a picture in an adult that doesn't have an imagination.
Yeah,
Um, in terms of like calming down, because although I can be reactive, I have enough emotional intelligence thanks to therapy to say, why do I even have this emotion, and then to deal with it. But there are so many people living in stressful situations right now that they allow a lot of adults will allow life to justify bad behavior, or
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
not necessarily even bad behavior all the time. I'll say poor behavior, or behavior or reactions that are not conducive to their own embetterment. And so I really want to shine a light on that in a way that doesn't make them feel stupid or dumb, because oftentimes the people that I'm speaking about are generally older than me. And so some of them automatically get upset just off the strength that I'm younger and trying to educate them. So that's already a barrier for me to cross, because they feel like I'm older, I know everything, and I have
Oh,
to
yeah.
kind of go through this whole ordeal of my life is different by way of me to show you what I learned on my different path. And your life was different by way to show me what you learned on your different path. And it's okay that we are not the same. And it's not a this or this by any way. It's just like, hey, I met you, you met me, and I came with my bags and you have yours. And so trying to get people to unpack that and to understand that we all cannot live in one another's trauma, in terms of, because most of those reactions are explosive based off something they've experienced in the past that doesn't have anything to do with the present moment.
I will also say very quickly, if you talk about a rucksack of life, okay, when you're talking to people, if you imagine I've got a rucksack of life which has got all my baggage in it, and you've got a rucksack of life that's got all your bag, right? If we take something out, we feel lighter. So if we can both help each other by taking something out of our rucksack, don't we both win?
Man, if I can get the non LinkedIn folks to understand this, this is one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to having more interviews and conversations here to share on platforms off LinkedIn, because I'm not saying that like everybody goes through something and everybody has something that they're toting around that can make them explosive and or reactive. But because most people in LinkedIn have worked in corporate America in some facet, they've learned to control it. And so it's all the other thousands, hundreds, or whatever platforms of these people that we live in a real world with that really need this information.
Mm.
Definitely need these
Well,
books.
write it
Definitely
down
need
and we'll
these
stick it
conversations.
into your community pack for sure. I know that we've got to go, Coach K, so I'm going to stop
Right.
you now. I'm going to stop. Annie, do you want to finish on the authors' conference?
Or Jack and Water. So I say, brother Charlie's here. I don't think he's bought a ticket yet, so welcome. So Sharon says, "I'm happy. I'm just happy and grateful. I'm learning more about children, and I'll pass it on to the community." so impactful. So
Thank you, darling. Thank you. That's all we want to do. That's all I want to do.
I suppose next time we can talk about using experiences to fuel the imagination. I don't think we'll cover that at all today. So let's make that our next room. So Calm says it sounds like Ben's mind deals with emotions by compartmentalization. If it's focused on one part of the task, I think the link at one link at a time. Then combine the links to create a process or system that gets his goal done. Yeah, no, man. Ben is a clever chappy. I'll tell you that for nothing.
But that's autism. That is absolute compartmentalizing is autism all the way. So we know that now. Right, absolutely. Well, listen, guys, I'll be talking on Thursday at the Authors Conference. 6 other speakers. It'll be great fun. Come along. I'm plugging it because I want you to be there. It's $10, $12, and I think it'll be fun, and I'd love you to be there. So please come.
We'll make it easy. So if you're watching on a computer, then you can just scan the code and then look for Let's Video. It says me talking. Yeah, here it goes. It's quite a while, so here it goes.
Hi, my name is Paula Hallam. Many of you will know me. I'm an author of Global.Media publishing. My reason for being part of the Authors Conference is very simple. I want people to fall in love with writing like I did. And the reason I fell in love with writing, I came to writing very late. I've always loved books, obsessed by books, always loved books, love reading, love learning. But I became a therapist counsellor. I'm no longer in practice, so I don't show any credentials whatsoever. But that was through one of the lowest times of my life. And I think that learning of having a 6-figure salary is great, but actually my son's mental health is more important than anything else. And so I chose to use the time and the effort that I'd learned everything from my son into other children. And then I realized that my front door was revolving. And so the answer is I decided to write books so that I could reach, because that's what books do. They reach out to thousands, to millions. And if everybody felt as inspired as I did to write, they would pick up their books, pick up their pens and start tomorrow. So this conference is about inspiring people to want to write, is about inspiring people to get on with the job. Stop thinking about it, stop wondering, shouldn't I? Pick up the pen, pick up the keyboard, just start. And come along to the conference, listen to 6 other speakers and be inspired. Want to do it. And the only way that's going to happen is if you buy a ticket and come along and you get to see us all in action, hear our story and understand the why. Not going to give you any more because otherwise you'll get too much. But this is me, and these are my beautiful books, the Jack and Water series. I'll hang over the top of them. There you are. There they are. Very, very important books to many, many children. And I'm very proud to say that. Many, many children have read these books. Many parents have said, thank you. That's so inspirational to me. Why don't you come along and see if we can inspire you to pick up a pen or to start writing?
Excellent. So we've seen that. Coach K's come back. Brilliant. So, now you're on mute. You're muted. Why are you muted?
Okay, I pressed mute.
Yeah, don't
Coach
do that.
K, I'm going to send you one of the free tickets. Are you going to be able to come, do you think?
Yes, ma'am. I
Perfect.
put it on my calendar already.
Right.
Excellent.
So Annie's going to send me a link, and then you're going to be the guinea pig, because we've not tried it yet. So we're going to try the new link, and you just put in that you want to pay $0 for it.
No, just go to the page and get to put your basic details in, your name, I think, your email, and then book. That's it.
Okay.
Any problems, let me know. Then I'll do something else.
So,
okay.
Annie, are you going to send Coach K the link, or are you sending it to me to send to her?
I'm gonna send it. I'll send it to you, then you can send it to people. Otherwise, I'll send it twice. I'll just send it to you.
Yeah.
Save me the hassle.
Cut out the middleman. Just send it to
Exactly.
me. I'll do the work. I know how it works.
I like being lazy, Paulette. You know me.
I know. I love you for it. It's one
Let's
of your
end
favorite
with Jack.
traits.
Let's end with Jack and Water.
Okay, let's do it.
And if you haven't bought the book yet, my friends, go buy the book. Go buy the books.
I got my
Walter, #1 bestseller worldwide. Stories that inspire, becoming every child's guide. She teaches resilience, skill by skill, slowing worries down until they're still. Approaching issues with a stronger mind, building generations one heart at a time. When the storm clouds gather and you don't know what to do, take a deep breath, clear your mind, let the answer come to you. Walter's gonna be there in your present and your future too. So just stop and ask yourself, what would Walter do? What would Walter do? What would Walter do? What would Walter do? Not for profit, but for every child's right to handle smaller challenges, to stand and fight. The bigger stuff takes longer, that's okay, but confidence begins with what we do today. Trustworthy souls and integrity shine at Mental Wellness Cafe. She draws the line between drowning in the darkness and finding light. She lifts them up, teaches them to hold on tight. When the storm clouds gather and you don't know what to do, take a deep breath, clear your mind, let the answer come to you. Walter's gonna be there in your present and your future too. So just stop and ask yourself, what would Walter do? What would Walter do? To clear your mind, give yourself headspace to think before you let the pressure make your spirit sink. Self-belief and talking to someone you trust, these are the tools that lift us from the dust. She champions the dignity of growing strong. Every child capable, they belong all along. Generations rising with the strength she's built. Paulette's legacy, a world without guilt. From Huntington to hearts across the globe, her compassion is the thread that she has woven and sewed. Adults and children, all walks of life, she's extending her